views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Straight ahead on Perspectives. In recent years, the world has experienced political turmoil that caught us by storm. In 2020, the issue of race relations in America was once again brought to the forefront after the police killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and then several other unarmed Black men and women. Well, throughout that and all of the time, we've seen more and more Black women, and particularly women of color, rise on the political scene. We've seen more and more leading the charge to bring change, as well as equality. And coming up on this special edition of Perspectives, we discuss how women of color are actually helping to reshape American politics. That's straight ahead on Perspectives with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind? Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in someone's life. Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let them know.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives. Daren Jaime here with you. We are so glad to have you sharing with us. As always, you can catch Perspectives every week right here on BronxNet's Channel 67. Of course, we invite you to stay connected on our social media platforms at BronxNet TV. And yes, the other way that you can get us, social media. If you want us, BronxNet TV, my personal, Daren C. Jaime, that's the professional page on Facebook, and then also on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find me at DCJaime23. Thank you for supporting the show as we continue. It's hard to believe that we are 20 years into doing this, but we're here 20 years later and continuing to bring you news, information, the people that make a difference, and we talk about the subjects that matter. And when we talk about subjects that matter, we continue our celebration this month of Women's History Month. We have a very special guest who's actually joining us on the show today. Her Bronx connection goes all the way back to the Bronx Borough President's office, where she made New York City history by becoming the first African-American woman to be appointed press secretary for the office under Bronx Borough President Adolfo Carrion. She has also held several senior level positions in government, which include her service as communications director to Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. With over 15 years of experience, she's also provided expert advice and delivered strong results for corporate high-profile individuals, including political candidates and elected officials. In 2007, she started a full-service crisis and public and community relations firm with a client list that includes the NAACP, Congressman Charles Rangel, New York State Senator Leroy Comrie, and then New York State Senator Kevin Parker, just to name a few. We're pleased to have Ronnie Oliva, founder and CEO of Sykes Global Communications. And Ronnie, good to have you.
Good to be here, Daren. Thank you.
And you know, in this whole intro, we're just gonna be right and real. You also came out of BronxNet too.
I know. I was telling a friend of mine recently. I said, you know what? BronxNet is a sort of a mainstay in my life. I started at BronxNet. I started as a reporter, and I also was a writer there. It's given me a lot. BronxNet is one of the best community access cable stations in New York City, I believe.
Thank you so much. Well, we're glad to have you here. Glad to have this conversation. And as we're talking, I mean, you're a woman that's on the move and you're doing a lot of great things. And your bio speaks to it. But every Women's History Month, I always like to ask our guests, what is it about Women's History Month for you? I mean, February, we have the accomplishments of African American history, and that does something for us, right? But for this month to be Women's History Month, what does that really mean for you?
I think Women History Month is it's very special to me, particularly when it comes to celebrating African American women. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is that there's so many disparities among African American women, whether it comes to healthcare, education, housing, and so we're fighting against so much. So when we have an opportunity to celebrate us and who we are, women in general, but African American women, because I'm an African American woman specifically, it's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Talk to me about really being in there, because as an African American woman, you're in the trenches. When we talk about doing public relations and community and communications, you're front and center with a lot of people and a lot of activity. What's it like being, and sometimes, let's be honest, you're one of the only faces, if not the only face, sometimes a few faces that can be in the room, corporate, and a lot of times you're dealing with white men, you're dealing with the power structure.
You know what? That's a super good question. When I first started my career, I found out the hard way, working on a congressional race. I was in a room with all men, and I was the only woman. And as we were going through our meeting minutes, we were coming up with some ideas on what to do with the campaign and how to move it forward. And as I began to speak and sort of push my idea for the win for the campaign, I was overlooked several times. And then the same idea that I actually came up with, when a guy said it, when a man said it, then it was taken to heed. So it's a tough road. I mean, it's not easy being the only woman sometime, and then also a Black woman, I think, but it takes strength, and it takes also determination, and it takes intelligence, figuring out how to maneuver in those rooms. But, I learned from the great Bill Lynch. Bill Lynch was a political consultant here in New York City. They called him the Rumple Genius. And one time we were at a meeting, and I was standing sort of off to the side, and he says, "Never stand off to the side." He said, "Sit at the table. You need to be at the table with everybody else." And from that point on, with his voice in my mind, I always made sure in any room that I went into that I had a seat at the table and my voice was heard.
Right. And it's not just even having a seat at the table. It's about having your voice heard at the table. And that's a transition. That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because there are many people who have the seat at the table, but then also to have your voice at the table. What was that like when you finally got your voice heard at the table?
Well, I think the position in which that I am, or I find myself in many times, it's communications. And so it's such an intricate part of a process or a corporation or a political campaign that you can't but help listen to the voice who is the communications director. So I think once I started voicing my opinion a lot more, and they realized that I knew what I was talking about, it was a really good feeling. I was very proud. I always knew I knew what I was talking about. I mean, I've worked in communications or some level of communications for 20 years now, whether I was a journalist, a writer, a producer, a talking head. So I've been around a long time. So the fact of the matter is, it wasn't me not thinking I didn't know what I was doing or saying. It was the people I was working with, getting them and convincing them that I had the experience and the talent to carry things through.
And when you look at where you are right now, obviously working in politics front and center, being communications director, press person, you work for Bronx Borough President Adolfo Carrion as that press secretary. That's being the voice. That's being the front person. That's being the voice for the person that is literally in that seat.
That's exactly right.
I'm sure you feel.
Yeah.
Of having to actually do that, right, and get it right.
And the bottom line is, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure on with Adolfo's office. I was the first African American press secretary. I started as the deputy press secretary, and I did so well in that position because right prior to becoming the deputy press secretary, I'd worked as a journalist. So when they told me that I had to do this press conference and they wanted a certain amount of media there, I didn't know that I didn't have the option not to get them there. So I got on the phone, sold the story, and to my surprise and more theirs, I got several major networks out there. So say the question again, Daren.
No, well, I mean, when you talk about that, I mean, being that voice, the pressure, you're talking about the pressure of actually being out there. And I think you answered it. of what that really means. You know, getting the networks out there, having that person say the right thing. And if that person is not saying the right thing, you have to ultimately be the person that answers those questions.
That's exactly right. So the onus really falls on you.
Right. Huge. Yeah. Talk to me about politics for a moment, because a lot of work that you've done has been in the political realm. I think right now, you know, we see the Biden administration. We see another press secretary. We see Jen Psaki. We've seen under the other guy, you know, we saw he had some women who were press secretaries as well. Talk to us about the influence of women in the political landscape and what you found.
Well, listen, women, first of all, have always been part of the political landscape. In particular, in the last national campaign with Biden-Harris, I mean, women played a key role, especially Black women played a key role in getting them elected. So I found through the course of my career that although, you know, when I first started, I didn't see as many women in positions of power. Now, today, I'm seeing women, you know, I mean, you know, from activists to, you know, working as a press person or a communications director within a government office. I'm seeing them all over the place. So I think we've come a long way. Do we still have to continue to fight to make sure that there's equality set throughout these industries, in particular industries, and not just communication? Absolutely. But I do see that we are making some progress.
And when we talk about progress, obviously progress is on the forefront. We see a lot of people. For you, seeing Kamala Harris to be elected as a vice president, African-American, Asian descent. Talk to me about your thoughts when you saw her receive that oath of office.
Oh man, Daren, I was incredibly proud, because I know what it takes. And I probably only know half of it. I mean, she's older than I am, and been doing this type of work or in this game for way longer. So I could only imagine half of the battles that she had to fight and win to get into that position. So I was incredibly proud of her.
Going to take a quick break and come back with more here on Perspectives, talking to Ronnie about her career. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the role of women and how that's expanded in recent times. Stay with us right here on Perspectives. And we're back here on Perspectives, and we're continuing our conversation with Ronnie Olivia, who's been talking to us a little bit about women and how we're shaping this Women's History Month. And Ronnie, I want to go right back to where we talked about before the break. Women itself, as we talk about politics, right? How are women now shaping the political landscape? We can talk about Kamala Harris, but, you know, if you talk about the Bronx, you have to mention AOC. If I go to Massachusetts, I'll talk about my sister, Ayanna Pressley. There's so many women that you could actually see, Black, white, Hispanic, you know, all demographics, who are actually making a dent in this world of politics.
You know, I think women are starting to realize that that their voices need to and deserve to be heard. I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her race demonstrated to a lot of folks that not only can you win as a young minority woman with a strong message, but you can win in a huge way, right? So I think seeing somebody like Alexandria sort of incentivized and motivated a lot of women throughout the country to say, look, if she can do it, I can do it too. We have a voice. We know what our communities need firsthand because we're usually on the ground. And so, you know, why not us? A lot of times in these communities, women are the heads of their households. So for better or for worse, they just are. So I think women of all people would be the best people to say what the needs are in the community the best.
Yeah. And when we talk about it, we see a lot of women on the congressional side, the Senate side. But let's talk even for yourself, right? Working in corporate communications, being there, you're seeing more and more women in the emergence of the communications field. Talk to me about that. How refreshing is that for you to see more and more women? And then particularly women of color who are really doing that.
Yeah, I think that it makes me proud because, again, when I first started, I remember being one of only in all 4 boroughs, Black woman who was in position of not deputy press secretary, but press secretary. And I remember when I first started, I would look around, I would never see a young woman of color or women, period, usually in a lot of places when I was a press secretary at that time. So I would encourage young people, you should make sure you learn how to write. Writing is good. Make sure you learn how to speak. Speaking is really good because this is a job that not a lot of us, or you couldn't find a lot of women in that industry at the time. But now you see more and more. So again, all I can say is that I'm so proud. My sister just had a niece, and I'm hoping that by the time she grows older and she wants to do this kind of work, that the road would be nice and open for her just to step right in.
Yeah. And for yourself, honestly, to be a business owner, because in addition to all this great work that you're doing, you have a business and you're knocking down doors and taking names. Talk to us about your business and let the public know exactly a little bit about what you're doing.
Well, I can tell you this. I started the business in 2008. And when I started, it was not an easy feat at all. I was one of the first women amongst my group of women who started their own business. I started right after leaving the congresswoman's office because I realized that trip between Brooklyn, where I lived at the time, and Washington, D.C. Was exhausting. And I also realized that I was working so many hours during the course of a week that if I could do this for her, I could also do this for many people. So my love for communication was always there, was consistent. But what I didn't like at the time with working with just one person was it wasn't diverse enough. It wasn't diverse enough. So when I started my firm, I realized I could use my discipline of communications, but I can do it with a diverse clientele. So I started off doing crisis management. I had one client, and that one client, eventually after having that one client for 2 years, I eventually started growing to 2, 3, 4 clients, and I haven't looked back since. But the fact of having your own business gives you the flexibility of who you choose to work with. Because we don't work with a political client or even a crisis client for that matter, unless we believe that they're telling the truth and their story is compelling. But we also have to believe in them, because the bottom line is I'm the mouthpiece for selling that story. So if I'm not passionate about it, how do I expect that particular constituency to get excited about it?
Do you remember the moment that you decided to make that launch and turn it over and say, listen, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do my own. I'm going to launch into my own company. I'm going to make this happen. I've been doing it for others. Now I'm really doing it for myself. What was that feeling like of saying, I'm going to leave this corporate environment and become this entrepreneur?
I think for me, yes, I do remember the exact moment when I realized that instead of working for someone that I'm going to go out on my own. I think for me, I didn't have a choice. My back was sort of against the wall. I was emotionally drained working for these particular different offices. And I knew that at some point, something was telling me that there's more for me. And so I decided to step out on faith. But it's always good to be good to people, because my first client came to me as a referral. There was a woman who I had been friends with for years. She was a reporter. And, long story short, she needed something and needed a favor. I did the favor. And when she came back to say, Ronnie, you did me this favor. Now let me do you a favor. And I was like, okay, and then she said, I have a client for you. And she gave me that client. So I say, always treat people well, because you never know where the help is going to come from. So that was it. But I did know exactly when I needed to get out and to move out on my own. Emotionally, I just couldn't. I was drained, and I needed to move. And that move was being on my own.
What was the biggest fear of being on your own? Because let's keep it honest. I mean, Black woman launching on their own in an industry that predominantly goes the other way.
It's crazy, but I didn't think about fear. Really? In my mind, I just knew there was something I had to do. If I wasn't going to work for somebody, full time, 9 to 5, I had to survive and I had to support myself, right? The one thing that I did know and I was very confident in, it was that I knew what I was doing. I knew that I knew how to write well. I knew that I knew how to sell a story, right? I knew that I was a hustler, born and raised in Brooklyn, well, born and raised in New York City, but born in New York City, raised in Brooklyn. So I knew I had those attributes, and I knew those attributes would carry me a long way. So I didn't think about the fear. I just thought about what I needed to do to survive.
We'll come back and take a quick break with Ronnie. But when we come back, we're going to let you know that she is not just doing it. She is literally being awarded for it. We'll talk about how she was named in a major category right after this here on Perspectives. And we're back here on Perspectives. Ronnie Olivia is our guest here on Perspectives, talking about Women's History Month, talking about her business and the accomplishments that she's actually made. Sykes Global Communication was named 2020 City and State New York Political PR's Power 50. And Ronnie, started from the bottom, now we here.
That's right. That is right. Listen, and I say so well deserved.
Right.
I've been working so hard for so many years, Daren. I started working when I was 16 years old with Summer Youth, and I haven't looked back since. So I say so well deserved. Bravo.
I mean, what is it like for you? I mean, honestly, to be named amongst the PR Power Political Top 50 is something that you see, but then when you see your name there, what does that mean?
You know, for me, it means that, you know, the acknowledgement of your peers. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
To have your peers acknowledge that you're doing good work, it's nothing like it. It's nothing like it. So we were extremely proud. And just to let you know, I got married, and in 2017, my husband joined the firm. He was a political strategist, and I obviously was doing press and PR. And then when we found out that we had that in common, you know, once we got married, we realized, why don't we join forces and do this together? So he had his own, and I had my own, and he decided to sort of fold into Sykes Global Communications, and we've been doing really well ever since. We've been growing. And here's the thing. I pride myself on being small.
Right.
The reason why I like that, because I have the direct contact with the client. You know, they're not getting the assistant to the assistant. They will be working with myself, Michael, and of course we have support. But for the most part, they're talking to us on a day-to-day basis, not the assistant to the assistant.
Right.
And I like that. I like having that contact with them directly, you know?
And that means a lot. I think when you talk about having direct contact with a client. And when you have that direct contact with the client, it's also important during special times.
Yeah.
I want to talk for a minute about crisis, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of work that you do sometimes can be, as that PR person, involved in crisis management and really being that Olivia Pope for real. Like, so talk to us about what that means, dealing with the crisis and being that front person.
And listen, let me tell you something. The crisis could be heavy at times. You know, I had a client who was accused of a heinous act. Obviously it was found out that he didn't do it. He was accused of was it rape? I can't recall, but I think he was accused of something that was a pretty heavy criminal activity. Long story short, he ended up meeting this woman online. He met with her. He had to go through the due process system of being found not guilty. But in situations like that, you find yourself being more than just a communications expert. You sort of find yourself being the support system for the person, and almost like a therapist, you know, while at the same time coming up with crafting the message so they can tell their side of the story. So it could be very heavy. I mean, we have several crisis clients now, and a lot of times when we have those particular clients, we don't speak of them until the situation is resolved. But it's a heavy, very cerebral, heavy thinking job. You know, you're constantly thinking, trying to figure out how to tell this person's story and tell the truth while you're telling the person's story always. So that could also be emotional draining, but I love it because the satisfaction for the satisfaction for me is there. The satisfaction of knowing that I helped a young man who was accused of such an act, who didn't do it, but his name was sort of now, it was mud basically, you know, because he was an actor. He was relatively well known, and so I was there to, along with his attorney, of course. I was there to sort of help him regain his name and his brand. And for me, that was very rewarding to see that and to see him climb back to where he is now, which he's very successful. He was in just a big movie recently.
Right. It's gotta be a great feeling. People always ask this question, right? What's the secret sauce? What's the secret sauce that allows you to do what you do? So I'll ask you the question: what is the secret sauce that allows you to do what you do and then be successful at it?
You know, I don't think there is a secret sauce. I think that it's a lot of hard work. I think that it's learning to write well. I think that it's about having integrity and sticking to that value of integrity. I think that it's, again, working long days, not expecting to necessarily have your weekends to yourself, and doing what you love. I mean, I love this work, Daren. I haven't done, I'm trying to think, and, when I was younger, what other jobs did I have, outside of, maybe working at a department store part-time. I never worked in anything but communications. I was lucky enough to never work in anything but communications. And so it's one of the best careers, I think, that anybody could have.
Yeah.
If you love people and you love writing, it's one of the best careers you could ever have.
I mean, it's nothing better than really going to work and enjoying what you do. And the other thing which you always tell people is when you're working for yourself, there's something special about when you get to work for yourself.
It is. It is. It is. It's very special. I think that for me, it empowered me. It empowered me to choose. I mean, the work is the work. You're going to have to work, right? But it gave me the power to choose the type of people that I wanted to work with. And for me, that was incredibly empowering. I get to sit and while they're talking to me to figure out, or interviewing me to figure out if they would like me to hire me, I'm also interviewing them to see if I want to work with them as a client. So it's empowering.
Yeah. Talk to us before we go. How do people get in touch with you? Maybe there's somebody who wants to be a potential client.
Yeah. You know what? You can log on to www.sykesgc. Do people say www anymore?
They got to tell you. Yeah, tell
They
them.
do? Okay. www.sykesgc.com.
The rule in journalism never changes. You assume that your audience knows nothing. So we always say it. That's okay. You can say that.
That's
Ronnie, Olivia, it's been great having you. Great seeing you.
One more thing. It's not Olivia. People get it wrong all the time. It's Oliva.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oliva.
That's okay. Everybody does it.
There you go. I should have done better. The journalist should have known better. Can't be doing it as a journalist.
Yeah.
Ronnie, thank you so much for being with us here.
No problem, Daren. It's a pleasure.
Great having you.
Good to see you.
Listen, I want to let you know now, if you want to watch Perspectives every week here on Bronx Channel 67, we continue to highlight women during Women's History Month, and certainly the people that we brought throughout the course of the month, very inspiring and hopefully informational. If somebody wants to get in their career, hopefully this show in particular helps you to ignite your passion. The things that we have inside of us, right? And we feel and we know that it's time to do certain things. Don't wait till it's too late, because then you have a whole lot of regrets. But while you have time and while you have an opportunity to make a decision, Ronnie called it a faith move. Sometimes it's a faith move. Some people call it the gut. Some people call it, hey, I had this thing come over. Whatever it is, if it's telling you to do it, go ahead and do it. And you'll never know, just where you land up. So listen, that's my perspective. Great having you here on the show. We'll catch you next week. For all of us here on the Set of Perspective, stay safe. Share your perspective with somebody else. You just don't know. It might make a difference in somebody else's life. Take care and God bless.
This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle it.